This video will examine the conflict surrounding the Hala'ib Triangle, exploring its history, the reasons for the conflict, its impact on the local population and the countries involved, and the current state of the dispute. The Hala'ib Triangle is a disputed territory in the shape of a triangle, caught in a conflict between Egypt and Sudan. It is home to approximately 30,000 inhabitants, many of whom are nomadic. To understand the conflict, it is important to delve into the history of the territory. The modern history of the Hala'ib Triangle dates back to 1820, when the Egyptian army, led by Ismaili Pasha, forcefully took control over Sudan. From that point on, Egypt and Sudan were governed as a single entity. This arrangement continued until 1899, when Egypt and the United Kingdom agreed to establish the border between Egypt and what would become Sudan at the 22nd parallel north latitude. However, this border did not remain intact for long. In 1902, the UK changed the border to accommodate the Ababda and Basharia tribes. Since then, Sudan has claimed the 1902 administrative boundary of the border, while Egypt maintains its position based on the original 1899 territorial boundary. As a result of this, both Egypt and Sudan claim the area known as the Hala'ib Triangle. The triangle remained under Sudanese control until 1984, when Egypt deployed forces to take control of the territory. 10 years later, after Egypt had established full control over the triangle, Sudan lodged a complaint with the UN, stating that Egypt had conducted 39 raids on Sudanese-controlled areas of the triangle in the past year. 1 year later, an assassination attempt was made against then-President of Egypt, Hosni Mubarak, while on a diplomatic trip in Ethiopia. Ethiopia's UN representative described Sudan's involvement in the attack as clear as day. The conflict appeared to reach a stalemate until 2012, when Egypt established a mineral resource company with the primary focus on exploiting resources in the Hala'ib Triangle. Then, in 2014, the Egyptian Prime Minister issued a decree aimed at developing Hala'ib, the main population center and namesake of the triangle, into a city, further escalating tensions between the nations. Furthermore, in 2016, Egypt and Saudi Arabia signed a decree that granted Saudi Arabia 2 Red Sea islands and recognized Egypt's sovereignty over the Hala'ib Triangle. In response to this, Sudan sent a letter of rejection to the United Nations. Most recently, in 2019, Egypt has invited bids for oil and gas exploration off the coast of the Hala'ib Triangle. The main reason both nations still claim the triangle is because of the abundant resources. An Egyptian governmental study has estimated there to be over 700,000 tons of manganese within the triangle. And as discussed in the previous section, Egypt is also exploring the possibility of offshore oil and gas reserves. As for Sudan, in 2011 they lost control over South Sudan, where most of their former oil and gas reserves were. This left Sudan without a source of oil in their borders. It's easy to see why they seek the triangle at this point in time. The border dispute has had a significant impact on the population of the Hala'ib Triangle. Living in the triangle is difficult, given the aridity and history of famines. Adding on to that, enhanced security measures and the militarization of the border have limited the flow of people across the border, leading to increased distrust between Egypt and Sudan. The region's inhabitants, predominantly nomadic tribes such as the Ababda and Basharia, face challenges in their daily lives. The dispute has also caused tensions between Egypt and Sudan to rise over the years. This eventually led to the assassination attempt against the president of Egypt. All of this put together has led to lessened ties between the two countries, resulting in Sudanese citizens being unable to enroll their children in Egyptian schools and universities. In response, Sudan shut down the Cairo University branch and numerous other Egyptian businesses. The current Egyptian government, under President Sisi, has pursued policies that hindered normalization between Egypt and Sudan. In an attempt to improve relations, the two countries signed an agreement in 2004 that would ensure the freedom of movement, habitation, work, and ownership to citizens of both countries. Egypt has not fully implemented this agreement, despite Sudan doing so not long after it was signed. To this day, the fate of the Hala'ib Triangle is uncertain. It is stuck in a battle of sovereignty between Egypt and Sudan that shows no sign of being resolved. The former president of Sudan has said they would go to the UN if Egypt refuses talks over the triangle.
المثلث حلايب هو حاجة ظل مثلث سوداني.
Hala'ib will remain a Sudanese triangle because under the dual British-Egyptian rule, the first elections in Sudan included Hala'ib, which was one of Sudanese constituencies, and elections are a sovereign act of the first class, and we will resort to the Security Council if Egypt refuses to negotiate.
Meanwhile, a resident of the triangle said that their minds and hearts belong to Sudan, while their stomachs belong to Egypt. This is a common sentiment in the region. This sparks a dilemma. The residents feel closer culturally to Sudan, but Egypt takes better care of their needs and has control over their land, rightfully or not. This has polarized the two countries. They are growing further opposed despite attempts to boost relations. Only time can tell the fate of the region and its inhabitants.